want to welcome the person who has helped make Florida remain free through all that COVID debacle. None other than Florida's Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo.
Good morning. I had a question. I thought Susan was going to be up here, but I don't see her. Susan, how much time do I have to talk? 'Cause I want to.
2 hours max. I got the rule off.
Does anyone?
Until Fauci's arrested.
All right. Okay. Let's go. Okay.
I'll find her and I'll tell you.
Okay. Hey, what's going on, brother?
Talk
Hey,
until
all right.
Fauci's arrested.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's see. Is that okay? Is that all right?
What about y'all?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If I need to move, you let me know.
30 minutes?
Okay. All right. Cool.
But whatever you want. You
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you to Susan. Thank you to Vic. Thank you to all the freedom warriors out there who, with your hearts and your intention, have been fighting for freedom many years. For many of you, many years longer than I have been. So thank you all. Thank you everyone who's out here and who's been fighting, who's going to keep fighting. I'm really happy to be here. Susan and her group told me that one of our besties, Dr. Fauci, has coming to somehow dared to come to the state of Florida to come and talk, and so whenever there's a message from Dr. Fauci, it's good to have a counter message. And that's how it's been for many years, especially over the last few years. And fortunately, the counter message prevails because Dr. Fauci's message is about Dr. Fauci and his interests, and the counter message is about our interests as human beings and what is best, what we view as what is best for humanity and human freedom and human dignity. So I'm definitely happy to be here representing that alongside with you all. So there's so much happening. The world is so different now than it was, a few years ago, and in fact even a few months ago. It's so much different. Thankfully, we have a different leader at the top of the executive branch with President Trump, and we have a different leader at Health and Human Services with Dr. Robert Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I want to give him a doctorate. And there's so many other good things, right? Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, a good friend of mine, along with Bobby. So the world is very different here, very different now, and that is a wonderful thing. I mean, yes, everyone out here, absolutely. Everyone out here is willing to keep fighting for as long as it takes. But it's nice when there's a little bit of weight taken off of the wagon, right? When the burden is a little bit lighter. And so the burden is a little bit lighter, but let me remind us all, for anyone who's unclear, and I think most of you are very clear, but for anyone who is unclear, the burden is still very heavy.
Yes.
The burden is still very heavy because, unfortunately, the bad guys, the guys who are anti-human, the guys who have put their agendas above the needs and the rights and the dignity of human beings, they've been at it for a while. So the playing field is a mess and beset with one after the other of risks and just assaults on our health and our freedom and our ability to be and achieve all that God has ordained us to be able to achieve and be. So there's so much more work still to be done. So here in Florida, fortunately, we have Governor DeSantis, who plucked me out of UCLA some years ago and brought me here to Florida. And and obviously he was working by himself, right? Many of you were here in the state at that time. He had the bravery to go against the huge wall, the COVID narrative wall that had been built up, constructed brick by brick by my colleagues as physicians, by other state leaders, by health officials, by Dr. Fauci, by so many people. We have this COVID narrative wall, and he went up against it. And fortunately, part of that included the moves and the leadership he showed with the restrictions and the lockdowns and the COVID vaccine mandates. Eventually, I became part of that. They recruited me to come over here, and we've continued to do things. So fortunately, we have that, but boy, is there still so much work to do. Where do we start with the word? Let's see, where shall we start? So, for one thing, here's just another great example, right? You've got this company, Monsanto, bought by Beer, and they have this product that unfortunately is in almost all of the food that we have in this country, glyphosate. And right now, they are lobbying to obtain state protections and federal protection against harms from their glyphosate, their weed killer. And yeah, and it's akin to what happened with the vaccines. And what's the problem with this? The problem, again, is forces that have taken their priorities and put them above your priorities, above the priorities of your family. Well, why do they even need to seek these protections? Because it turns out there's a lot of scientific evidence that shows that glyphosate, among other things, seems to be linked with cancer. Is that all it's linked with? No. It also seems to be linked with hormone dysfunction. It seems to be linked with immune dysfunction. It's linked with many different harms. And instead of having a thoughtful conversation, right? Instead of having the conversation about, does it really make sense to not let young people be outside, play outside, get together, attend school? Does it really make sense not to do that and instead to try and shut them apart in homes and have them looking at iPad screens for education? Instead of having that rational conversation, which in this case, the rational conversation, the sensible conversation was, well, you know what, gosh darn it, how can we make our food healthier so we're not poisoning people? The conversation that instead is being had by these guys is, well, how do we obtain state protections? And they're currently lobbying to try and secure state protections. They've already had some success in Georgia. They're trying in Florida. It's insane, but that is the playing field that we are part of. That is the reality, and that is why what everyone out here is doing is so important. That's why it's so important that everyone keeps doing what they're doing out here. More insanity. Where else can we go?
Chemtrails.
Well,
Chemtrails.
this is another great example, right? Another great example. It's actually very akin to the conversations that have been happening in the state of Florida about fluoride addition to water, right? So you have some people, whatever their energetic or spiritual intentions was, we can have a conversation about that. Whatever the scientific cover is, well, all this man-made pollution is gonna, that's gonna lead to the end of the world, as if that's what's gonna lead to the end of the world, right? Right? Yeah, I mean, yes, we can have the end of the world, but it's not because of the things that we are doing as human beings to just take care of our families and be together. It's because of all these efforts to save us from the end of the world. But so what these forces, what this idea, or what this ideology really is doing is saying that, well, with the United Nations and other countries, what we are going to do to save the planet and save everyone on the planet is we are going to release different substances into the air. Substances with aluminum and barium and cadmium and silicone, all these other substances. And and we're gonna, it will help deflect the sun and all this stuff. Did anyone ever bother to come and ask you whether people have a right to put stuff in the air you breathe? I mean, this is the madness. The same thing goes with fluoride. I mean, at this point, the scientific evidence really doesn't support it as a public health benefit in terms of even looking at dental benefit. It just doesn't, it's not supported now. There was more evidence decades ago, but now it's not supported. But even putting that aside, who in heaven's name thinks that they are entitled and have a right to medicate you without your permission? Who has the right to do that? No one has the right to do that except you. But rather than having the sensible, human-centered, grounded, God-inspired conversation, they want to have this scientific, technocratic conversation about why they have a right to put stuff, medicine, in your water without your permission. It is insane. And the cherry on top of the pie is the fact that it's not even supported by scientific evidence. Now the scientific evidence is showing that, well, it's probably harming pregnant women and their babies. It's probably harming children. It may be harming adults too. That's what the scientific evidence is showing. And that's where a sane conversation starts. But so much of our leadership wants to engage you in insane conversations about whether I can fire you today or give you another week to see if you change your mind about taking a new vaccine. Those are insane conversations, right? Those were the topics, right? Insane conversations about whether you're allowed to fly on a plane or open your business, right? Your business, what you poured your blood and sweat into, right? Insane conversations about when you're going to be allowed to do that again, right? So much of the playing field, of the battlefield, is about these crazy conversations, and they're normalized with people thinking that that's the conversation that they're supposed to be having. We want to help patients, but you cannot help a patient without their will. They get to choose what you do to their body. That is, it's not like, there's no debate about that. Okay? That's settled, right? Unlike the settled science, that is settled. There's no debate about that. People get to choose what they do with their bodies. And they get to choose that because they have sovereignty. And you know who granted them sovereignty? Yes, everything, right? God, right? As manifest in every single thing around us. Sovereignty. And the pediatricians want you to have an insane relationship where, well, it turns out you don't have that sovereignty. Here's what you need to put in your kid's body. Okay, and by the way, because of the amount of the consequences, right? You can't get care for your kid. That means that those physicians, those pediatricians who are walking around telling parents this, cannot obtain your informed consent. They cannot obtain your informed consent because they have created a situation that's coercive. You can't have informed consent when there's coercion. There's no debate about that. That's just how it is. But they want you to believe that they have a right to have this insane conversation and for you to be a part of it. So the governor is spearheading with Senator Collins this bill with a patient bill of rights. And we're fighting, guys. But you know, it's not as easy of a fight as it should be, right? There's some language in there that I'm hopefully going to be talking with some lawmakers this afternoon and tomorrow about to change. Because instead of the way the right should be, unfortunately, there's some people who want to, they want to make it a little squishy, as I think Governor DeSantis likes to use that word, that would undermine your sovereignty. There are lawmakers that want to do that.
Let's get ivermectin sold over the counter in Florida, like Arkansas has.
Okay, yeah.
We need that.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about ivermectin over the counter. Thank you for bringing that up. People brought that up. I want to tell you, so it's not something that it's not one of the things that have been, and there are things that have been high on my mind that we've been working on, and it's not one of the ones that has been high on my mind. But I have noticed that people have reached out to me about it. I want to tell you, I think because ivermectin, as it turns out, despite some of the lies that we heard during the Biden administration, it's very low risk. It's a very safe medication. It's really safer than acetaminophen, than Tylenol. So in terms of folks who want it over the counter, I think that I personally, if someone wanted that, I think it's fine. Part of the problem I know people have been encountered is pharmacists who know better than any of the doctors and refuse to dispense it. Give me a break. Give me a break. So, yeah, I support it. It's a safe medication. The one, as a data guy, as a scientist, the one thing I don't like about it is that that dynamic is that it's just a nerdy turn here, but it makes it harder to study so that we can do some studies. But anyway, I totally am supportive of it. I don't know if any lawmakers have been thinking about taking that up, but I'm totally supportive of it. I think it's a safe thing.
Back as off-label. That's where we start, because I used to prescribe it like candies during the height of the pandemic until they suppressed it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? So much craziness, and frankly, unfortunately, led by Dr. Fauci. And while we're talking about that, I want to take a moment to talk about something else people have reached out to me about, and it's about vaccine injury, and about, for example, Cody's Law. Yeah, so we've been working. Obviously, you guys have seen some of the things we've been doing, and we have more coming, and we actually have something. We should have something that should be coming out actually within the week that will be very fun, that we've been using our data and public health surveillance to do something important. So hopefully within about the next week you'll hear about that. With Cody's Law and vaccine injury, I know a lot of people have reached out about about this issue of vaccine injury. So one of the reasons it's been really, and I'm grateful for the people who are trying to advance it here in Florida. Unfortunately, it's not making much progress. So I encourage supporters to keep calling your lawmakers to try and create some progress for it. So one of the challenges, this pandemic has been, it's been littered with so many evils and so many wrongs. Thank you very much. It's been littered with so many wrongs, right? It's from everything, right? All the lives that were destroyed in terms of businesses, all of the kids who fell behind in their school and whose lives are changed forever because of that. Because education is one of the major predictors of progress and potential in this country. All the poor folks who were fired because they didn't want to take something in the job. All the people whose dignity was denigrated because they didn't want to take something for their job but didn't feel like they had a choice and they ended up doing it. So many evils, right? So many assaults on human dignity. And one of them is how COVID-19 vaccine injury has unfolded. And I am completely, there's no doubt about there's a doubt about the depth and the breadth, and just in terms of how horrible and horrific these mRNA COVID-19 vaccines are. And I've tried to make my position very clear on that. No human being should ever put that in their body, and I'm sorry that people have, but it should never happen anymore. Oh yeah, it's one evil after the other. And unfortunately, the vaccine, part of the circumstances around vaccine injury is surrounded by the same evil. And what evil was that? Unfortunately, people like Dr. Fauci made it extremely difficult for people like me and other scientists who are actually interested in characterizing and quantifying vaccine injury-related adverse events related to these mRNA COVID-19 vaccines possible to do. What do I mean by that? Well, one of the ways, and we do this in the Department of Health, we released a study back in 2021 that showed that, actually 2022, pardon me, that showed that young men were at higher risk for cardiac arrest in maybe the first 30 days or so after COVID-19 vaccines. And we're doing some other work right now, and again, you'll hear more about that probably within the next week. But one of the ways that we can prove these things is with data. And unfortunately, Dr. Fauci and others basically made it almost impossible to do this in a proper way. How did they make it impossible to do it in a proper way? They never supported the creation of codes, diagnosis codes that we could use as physicians to analyze this, and for physicians to actually document what they believe is suspected injury, adverse events from COVID-19 vaccines. They discourage doctors from reporting, from acknowledging, from documenting, whether it was in VEERS or even clinical notes, right? Organizations took away the licenses or the board certifications of doctors who spoke out about it. So I want to do more with COVID-19 vaccine injury. And I've got some ideas actually that we'll see if we're able to make some progress about it. And I can't disclose the details here that are data based. But the people who set things up and who were in power, the leadership on the public health side, the physician side, created circumstances that made it very difficult to document this stuff, and therefore to have a structure that you can use to adjudicate cases. So I know I'm talking a little bit technically here, but the bottom line is that just another casualty, right? Another casualty of the evil that we've seen in the last few years has been the ability to appropriately identify and do something about, proactively about folks who have been adversely affected by COVID-19 vaccines. So that's the reason why I have not been able to do more yet. I am not done trying, and I never will be done trying. I never will be done trying. But I just want to let people know that, believe me, I hear you. And guys, it's one thing, right? These poor people like Brianne Dressen, I think, who will have these devastating neurological, cardiac injuries immediately afterward. But guess what? Other people aren't in the clear. How many vaccines have been found later, right, to increase the risk of different autoimmune diseases, right? That happens. Maybe it happens weeks, months, maybe even years later. But even those people, they may not be documented, but there's way more to this than just meets the eye, or that just happens immediately. There's way more to this. So it is a fight for our freedoms. It is a fight for our dignity. It is a fight for what it means to be a human being. And it is a fight. It is a fight for justice. It's a fight for virtue. And again, I really appreciate everything everyone out here is doing to hold up that fight, to keep it moving forward. I'm glad we've got friends and friendlies in high places in Washington, D.C., but they cannot do it alone. In fact, they not only can't do it alone, it won't happen alone for them. It happens here at the grassroots level. It happens at the state level. It happens with your actions. So please, thank you for what you're doing. I am deeply appreciative. I will keep doing the same on my end. And thank you guys. God bless you guys.